There's some music that really freaks people out. One time, I was in college, and I had the album Interstellar Space by John Coltrane, and I had it on CD, and my friend came by, and he was at my apartment, and we were just hanging out, and at one point I said, "Have you ever heard this album, Interstellar Space by John Coltrane?" And he said, No, I'll check it out, sure. I said, okay, cool. So I put it on, and we listened for about 5 minutes. And if you don't know the album, it's a saxophone. Technically, Coltrane also plays some bells that he shakes, and drum set duo. And it's pretty wacky, and it's very cool if you're in the mood for that. And it really just goes off into interstellar space. Well, my friend checked it out for a few minutes, and I felt his whole aura change. And he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, man, I gotta go." And we never hung out again, not one time after that. So you never know how strong music can affect somebody. Now, there were probably other reasons why we didn't hang out again, but I always thought, man, a music so potent that it could break up a friendship. It's a great record. I mean, I recommend it to anybody if they want to check it out. I don't think it's dangerous necessarily. This is Earth Tones, episode 18. Everybody ain't gonna like it. That's what it is. So, first, before we talk about how ain't everybody gonna like what you make, let's listen to something that you might not like. This is, well, let's hear it. That is a washing machine at the laundromat. It's a bit intense. That's like right next to the washing machine. If you were to listen very carefully, you can hear that daytime television programming. Usually it's game shows, which is fun. Sometimes it's The View or something. And yeah, that's a little unpleasant maybe for some folks, and for others who might find it a little interesting to hear the rhythm of the machine and all of that vibration. So you never know, like ASMR. Man, those videos, a lot of that drives me crazy. I have what they call misophonia, something like that. It's like an intense aversion to certain sounds, and like mouth sounds or chewing, they can drive me absolutely like irrationally insane. So ASMR is not a huge thing for me. For a bit of old news, This week I tied together the old news and the turntable, what's on the turntable. So I've been thinking a lot about the Allman Brothers Band. I am listening to the audiobook called Uncool, which is Cameron Crowe's autobiography. He's the person he's made lots of movies, but he was a journalist, and he made Almost Famous. So if you've seen Almost Famous, I've seen it several times, and I love that movie. His story, his actual life story, is the inspiration for Almost Famous. So a lot of the things that happen in the Almost Famous story happened in his own life with different types of scenarios. So it's really cool to check out that audiobook and hear all the different things of, if you know that movie as well as I do, then you realize what became what in the story. So one of the things is, in that movie, the band Stillwater, some of those stories are based off of his actual experience with the Allman Brothers Band. I never knew that the Allman Brothers Band was the band that Stillwater was based on. Stillwater is great. A lot of movie bands are great. So he talks about going out with the Allman Brothers after Duane had died and doing interviews with all of the band members, and especially some memorable ones with Greg. So I'm thinking a lot about the Allman Brothers this week. They're one of my most favorite bands of all time, of course. I'm sure it is for many of you as well. So for a bit of old news this week, if we go way, way back, this is a quote from John Loudermilk, who had, in a way, discovered the Allman Brothers Band. And this was in Nashville when he went and saw them play way, way back. So this is a quote of him talking about going and seeing them. Tom Parker told me one time, who was Elvis Presley's manager, Tom Parker told me one time how to check out an artist. He said, you turn your back to the artist. You know what he looks like on stage. Just turn around and watch the audience. You can see the emotion in their faces, and you can tell how much they'll pay to continue having that emotion. So John Loudermilk goes in, discovers the Allman Brothers Band, and starts spreading the word. They were called the Almond Joys, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we check out the album of the week. But first, for the main discussion, ain't everybody gonna like it. So, here it is. If you try to make something everybody likes, you might make something nobody likes. We use music to accentuate our states of being. So we expect the music we listen to be a bit exaggerated emotionally. It has to be potent enough to affect you. This week I've been thinking about how the things AI makes are by definition the middle of the road. They're a smoothie of everything it's been trained on, designed to be the average of all of those inputs. So it usually doesn't feel like it has any edge whatsoever. I personally never seek out anything that's deliberately middle of the road. I want the funkiest funk, the dubbiest reggae, the rockinest rock, or else it doesn't hit me the way I'm looking for. By making something that is something, you both attract and deter listeners. Everybody ain't gonna like it, so some people might love it. That's the thing. If you're going to make something that resonates with folks, and I think that's what we're trying to do, then you have to find what really speaks to you. And that's the journey that I'm on, is thinking about what really speaks to me. And one of those challenges I have is the fact that I like different genres of music. So if you want to make the funkiest funk and you want to make the bluesiest blues, well, you have to be able to spend time with those styles. And that's not to say you can't make a blend of styles, but the emotion behind it should be strong. That's where I'm coming from, is that we usually listen to things that have a strong emotion. So it doesn't have to be a pure form of a style of music or anything like that, but it should come across as something. And what we usually don't like is something that's just bland or doesn't make you feel anything whatsoever. So if you make something that you feel very strongly, I remember making some tracks back in the day that I was in college and they were experimental, and showing them to some people, showing them to my girlfriend at the time and showing them to some friends. And I remember my girlfriend thinking, like, she said, that sounds terrible. And I showed it to my friends and they thought it sounded kind of cool. So you never know. You have different strokes for different folks, but also, making something that's got a bit of an edge that's distinctly what it is, I think is crucial. It's kind of like a classic mistake to make something that you think is going to be like the ultimate crossover. And that was one of my big hangups of why it's taken me so long to figure out how to make my music, because I thought, well, I want to take all of these things and find the average of them, and then a lot of people will like it, because the people that like my blues stuff will find the blues in it, and the people that like the rock stuff and the people that like the reggae. But then you end up making something that nobody's going to put on. So, or at least you feel that way. And that's a whole other discussion. Who knows? Even the weird stuff that you think nobody will like, there's probably some folks that will like it. But I'd be surprised if people put on the kind of music that you hear at the airport, just what they call Muzak. I learned this week, actually, Muzak was a corporation, and they specialized in making music that could be played in the background while people worked in factories and things. That was deliberately not really anything at all, and that's where that term came from. So, what is on the turntable this week? What's on the turntable this week is the Almond Joys. These are the early tracks that were produced by John Loudermilk. So side A are the ones produced by John Loudermilk, and on side B, it's the tracks that were produced by John Hurley once he had heard the band and said, yeah, we should be cutting more tunes with these guys. So I'll read a little bit of the background of this. One quiet Nashville evening back in '66, songwriter John D. Loudermilk walked into a small club called the Briar Patch. Up on the bandstand was what looked like just another of the thousands of teenage rock bands of the era. When they started to play, Loudermilk could tell they weren't so typical after all. The two frontmen were both blonde and very intense. One played a trebly, stinging slide guitar. The other sang in an anguished, world-weary voice. John D. wondered how it was that these two looked so young and played so experienced. Needless to say, he was very interested in the group, which he discovered called itself the Almond Joys. Now, I was reading that, and I was learning more about this album. And it's funny because on the Wikipedia article it says that must have been a misremembering of the night, because apparently Duane didn't start playing slide until '68. So you can learn more about Duane in this book, Skydog. Of course, Duane Allman would only live to 24 years old. This is Skydog by Randy Poe. It's a great biography of the late, great Duane Allman. So, something that helped me this week, moving forward, not letting perfectionism stop me. This week I was trying to get on a roll. I was excited about having put out Little Kitten Blues a few weeks ago, and I was thinking, this next track that I make, I should have video with. I should be able to just come in the morning before anything happens and record a song with a video and put it out there on YouTube. I know that's not a revolutionary idea, but for me, I've often clinged to things and made it almost impossible to put things out by being so concerned about perfectionism. So I was thinking about the song It Hurts Me Too, which finding the songwriter of is harder than I thought it would be. The original recording, the first one, came out in, I think it was 1940 by Tampa Red, and then the version that most of us know, Elmore James, came out later, and there's been a million versions of it since, including the Grateful Dead and all sorts of, great versions of it that we've heard over the years. Most people seem to base their version off of the Elmore James. I definitely, when I recorded mine this week, was probably thinking more about the Elmore James version, but I don't play the slide lick from that. I just played it as a tune with my own little arrangement. But I decided I was singing that song that morning. Oh, you know what? I'll set up the camera. I'll just record it. So I did a few takes of it, and I chose the one that I liked, and I chose the one that I thought sounded the most emotionally resonant. You can hear I almost get choked up on it. And at first I thought maybe that's almost too vulnerable, or maybe I sound like I'm about to cry, or that's not cool. Maybe I should do one that's more confident. And then I thought, well, that's not a middle of the road emotional thing. That is a genuine emotional expression. So that'll be the take that I go with. And there was even a little bit of noise in the background. I don't want to necessarily call attention to it if you listen to it and think about it, and it ruins your experience of hearing the song. But there were a couple of things that happened in the background. I think a cable moved or something and hits the floor. And I could have gone using a plug-in. I could have gone in and eliminated those extraneous little sounds. But I left them there, not out of some purist desire to have it be authentic, but just because I knew if I made that process take longer of just sharing that performance with the world, that there was a chance I would just shelve it. And I know that there's a lot of things that on my hard drive have kind of died between inspiration and sharing it with the world, because I thought, I can share that as soon as I do XYZ. So I just thought, you know what? That's the sound of a microphone just placed in a certain way. I didn't even EQ it. That's literally what it sounds like, except I added a tiny smidge of reverb. And then I just made it a little louder with a limiter, and I exported it. There's no EQ on that track whatsoever. So I didn't fix it up, like I said, add a little reverb, and then I pretty much just put it on YouTube and shared it with my friends. So that's what helped me this week, is just trying to get over myself a little bit and just say, hey, man, this is what I sound like on any given Thursday morning. So that is episode 18 of Earth Tones. Oh, I was supposed to do a musical demonstration. Let's do a little musical demonstration. This is something that I've never played before. So that's what it sounds like. So just play whatever you feel. I've been fortunate this week to you can trace where something comes from. I can say, well, I've never played that before. I might not have played that specifically before, but it clearly somehow originally started with some form of can't find my way home. So think about stealing something, take something from something else, and see if you feel that way, and it's a vibe, a mood. Create a little loop, try to connect to your instrument. That's my musical demonstration. And that is episode 18 of Earth Tones. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Please check out that version of It Hurts Me Too, the old classic, on YouTube. If you type in Jake Pardee, It Hurts Me Too. You can visit jakepardee.com for more information about my music. You can go to maritimerecording.com for more information about your music and how we can work together with music lessons or recording. And I'm Jake Pardee signing off for this week, reminding you we are a delightfully musical species on a uniquely musical planet. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week for Earth Tones episode 19. All right, see you next time.